Well, welcome students and everyone else that has been able to join us today. We'll do a quick round of introduction before we get started with some questions. So my name is Will Dyer. I oversee the corporate affiliates program at the Jacobs School of Engineering, where we seek to develop corporate partnerships with really top engineering companies across the globe. And Samba Nova has been one of our more recent corporate partners to join us. The real goal of developing these partnerships is to bring in companies that want to recruit the best talent that the Jacobs School of Engineering has to offer. And Samba Nova has seen the talent coming out of the Jacobs School and has decided to really have a more strategic and targeted relationship with the School of Engineering. So that's me. We've been working with Samba Nova here for the last 6 months or so, and we're grateful to have Fiona and Rodrigo join us today to give a little bit of an overview of Samba Nova, and I have a number of questions for Rodrigo, and ultimately we'll certainly lay plenty of time towards the end for some Q&A. So with that, I'll go ahead and introduce. I'll allow Fiona if you want to introduce yourself as well. I know you put it in the chat, and then I'll do a quick intro for Rodrigo.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you, Will. As I shared in the chat, my name is Fiona. Super excited to be working with UCSD the past 6 months or so. I managed a university recruiting program at Samba Nova Systems. And so if you do have any questions, I would be the right contact. In the chat, I will leave my email address and also the job postings, right, for the roles that we're hiring for today, which our primary focus is full-time hiring, though we do have an internship program as well. So if you're looking for internships, please do still submit an application across software and hardware engineering. So yeah.
Wonderful. And then I have a bio for you, Rodrigo, but if you'd want to feel free to introduce yourself rather than me trying to read off of a off of a Word doc here. You're welcome to introduce yourself.
Sure. Rodrigo Leong, CEO and co-founder of Samba Nova Systems. Samba Nova is a company that's focused on building AI infrastructure, both hardware and software. We are actually one of those few companies that are able to build a state-of-the-art silicon on 7 nanometer and below for AI specific, and take it all the way up the stack and building the runtime optimizations above that, the compiler stack, all the way through the models. And if you look at the profile of the company, we've got industry leaders that have been building hardware and systems for many, many years across many, many different architectures, all the way through some of the most well-known folks in machine learning and software development in the company, starting with my two co-founders, Kunle Olukotin and Chris Ray. And so those of you who are interested in machine learning and AI, this is a great opportunity to look at kind of some of the activities that we're doing and see if this is what's of interest to you. And Fiona's the person that is the most popular person in the company. She gets more inbound things than anybody else in the company because there's a lot of excitement in the space right now. We have a lot of positions, but it's also an incredibly challenging type of role that for those of you who kind of really want to grow and really feel like you can apply some of the things that you've learned about machine learning, about compilers, about runtime software, about semiconductor design, working in state-of-the-art 5 nanometer, 3 nanometer types of technologies, and then learning across the stack, right? This is one of the few places in the industry that you can do that, and still has the appeal of a startup and all that comes with it, right? The excitement of running fast, doing all the things that startups typically do, and I suppose a little less with COVID these days, but prior to that, all the late night social things that people do as startups and things like that, there's still a lot of activities like that. But for us, it's ultimately about finding the brightest and the best to come and work with us. We see an opportunity to change the landscape of how computing is going to be done, and we're excited to be here and share some of those ideas with you.
Excellent. Very good. Well, I'll jump into a couple of questions. So these are really just questions to learn a little bit more about you, Rodrigo, and the company, and really what it's like to be in the startup world. So I'll start here. So did you always know that you wanted to start your own company, and why or how did you kind of come to this decision?
Yeah, I graduated from Stanford. I did my undergraduate and grad school at Stanford. And when I first came out, and this was in the early '90s, and so when I first came out, I was a signal integrity engineer, right? And actually, I did my undergrad in control systems. For those of you who are doing that, I don't know if they do that anymore. I was cloning my own motors and actually doing actuators and things like that. And then my graduate work in computer architecture. But when I came out and went to work for Hewlett Packard, was working on, well, I did an internship building printers. This is when the inkjet printers were just starting, and it's just amazing what you can do with just square waves pulsing into little vials of ink, and just trying to heat the ink up enough so that it splashes onto the paper. That was my job for a summer, and a couple of summers actually. But then when I first started working, I was doing IO chip design and focusing on signal integrity, running SPICE and things like that. And so I was quite happy actually doing that level of engineering, just really interesting work, and a bit different from what I studied actually. And that's probably one of the things that I always tell people with that coming out of school. What you study sometimes doesn't necessarily have to one-to-one map to the immediate job, but eventually it adds to the set of tools that you have. Right. It took me a while before I got back to, AI effectively, so it's control systems. And so effectively, many years later, it came back into play. But I always felt like, engineering was my passion. I wanted to work on that. Fairly quickly, the business side of engineering kicks into you, and you're starting to figure out, well, how do I build things that people want to consume and people want to buy and use and deploy? And so once you start thinking about that, you get into management in some of these big companies. I was at Hewlett Packard for a while, but then eventually you start realizing I can learn a lot at a startup. Right? I really can. And so I suppose the short answer is no. I always thought that I could learn a lot from the big companies and doing it a certain way, but the breadth of exposure that a startup gave me was just so different. And so I did a couple of startups, and then my last one prior to SunNova was acquired by Sun Microsystems, and we built processors there with the startup team that I have now. We did that for a long time, and then finally the opportunity came back around again for me to go back into a startup mode. So I love it. It's great. It's always it's very dynamic. You get to try a lot of different things. And for those of you who kind of like the idea of getting exposed to a lot of different things, both on the engineering side and the business side, there's no better place to try it.
Wonderful. We have a good partnership with HP, especially the San Diego office that does a lot of the inkjet printing and R&D there. And then a couple folks from Sun Microsystems that are on a couple boards with us. Greg Papadopoulos and John Wade were both executives at Sun Microsystems, in case those names ring a bell.
Greg's fantastic. He's, it's again, somebody that knows a lot about the industry. He's just been such a visionary person in this industry for such a long time.
Absolutely. He actually helped us launch. He's been helping us launch a systems engineering program. So we're starting to launch a brand new systems engineering program with a lot of his input. So,
great.
So I'll head over to the next question here. So what led you to choosing your two co-founders? How did the three of you come together? And did you meet in college? Was it through a couple other other industry connections? How did you how the three of you come together and choose to start SunNova?
And this is an important thing. Well, startups get started in many different ways, right? But I always tell people, it's whether it's a startup or a big company, any venture you do, just choose your partners carefully. So with Kunle and Chris, they're just such fantastic people, and they're just great people first, and people that you can exchange ideas with, and people that you know, and you know that you can actually work through all the ups and downs of a startup with, and that's really important. In fact, we do that with even our investors and many of our customers, right? Just really build up a base of great partners that you can work with. Startups are never a straight line. It's in the purview of startups to go figure out what the path is, right? If you knew, then it wouldn't be a startup's job, right? And so so there's a lot of pathfinding that goes along with it, and you're going to find the right set of people to go with you. Now, Kunle and I, we've known each other for 20 plus years, and so one of the things, again, that somebody taught me a long time ago, and I hope many of you continue to do it as well as your careers get started, is building those. Find the people that you really respect. Find the people that you really work well with, and hang on to them for a long time, right? Even if you don't have a clear project that you have working on today, or a particular goal. And this is kind of what happened. Kunle was starting at Stanford as a professor just as I was finishing up, and so but we never connected then. But later on, when he was starting, his last startup called Fire Web Systems, and Sequoia was their early investor, I got connected to Afara through that. And so it was wonderful to make the connection. It's been a friendship that's been fostered for decades, right? And then again, Kunle and Chris were friends for a long time. When Chris came from Wisconsin over to Stanford, the two of them collaborated on a number of projects, so they're very close. And so I got introduced to Chris through Kunle as well. And so it's been just a great collaboration, great friendship. And so with almost anything that I say with business, always think about the partners that you have, and think about kind of the collaborators you have. If you have great folks, it makes all the difference, right? And so we've done that with a set of investors. We actually were able to gather around the table for this company, and then certainly all the advisors. And if you go on the webpage, you see a web of advisors that are just phenomenal. And so I'm a big believer in that. Find great people, hang on to them, and surround yourself with really smart people that kind of see the world the same way you see it, and a lot of good things happen.
Wonderful. And if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, was the tech that's kind of the tech behind SambaNova, was that started in Kunle's lab and then spun out, or had you already was this kind of a nugget of the ideas coming from all three of you that you then started the company with?
Yeah, much of the innovation came out of Kunle's lab, and then and then brought in with Chris Ray's lab as well. I think, and then start collaborating, and a lot of the principles that we have to validate and make sure that from a science perspective, thinking about kind of the direction of how computing is going to work, and especially when you're thinking about the complete stack, we took a very software first approach where you have to, a lot of folks in chip design, they just start laying down transistors, right? Even the chip guys, they get really excited, especially now you have a renaissance of silicon. And so people just start slinging transistors and getting chips out. And then they think, okay, how can I use this? Right? So we created a hammer. Now, what should I hit it with, right? And so what I like about what Kunle and Chris did was they went back to first principles. They went back and say, look, we've got the main specific languages, of which machine learning code is one class of them, but we've got these workloads that are coming, and they have certain characteristics that are unique. And then going from software on down and figure, well, what do you really need? If you want to be the computational engine for the world in the future, what do you really need? And that actually breaks it down to several things that, layers wise, as far as, this is what the software stack needs to look like. This is what your compiler needs to do. These are the different layers of compilers that you need. This is what your runtime code needs to be able to handle. This is how you have to handshake with the other parts of the system, because you have other things going on, OSs and things like that. Once you have all of that, coming out of that, it becomes clear what the hardware platform is, right? And what the chip platform is. And now once you do that, then the next challenge you have is you look around And I don't know how many people here are semiconductor graduates here, but I'll say this, being in the space for a long time, over the last 15 years, the chip design industry has been grossly underinvested in, right? And so you don't have tons of graduates out there just walking around and say, hey, I know how to actually push out a 7-nanometer chip. You just don't have that, right? And so that's a challenge of it. And there's a tremendous demand now for people who enjoy doing chip design and want to study in it, because every hyperscaler, all the different large companies are trying to figure out how to get into the silicon game, because there is such a great opportunity now, right? So there's a resurgence there, but all in all, it's not going to be offset by the fact that 15 years we underinvested in chip designers, and so didn't graduate enough of them. A lot of people that were chip designers 15 years ago left and went into software, and so I think you have a shortage in skill sets out there as well when it comes to chip design. But for doing something like this, you definitely need mature chip design experience to do it, because the dimensions of the technology, the amount of power it's taking, the amount of computational horsepower that's necessary to do this, it's not trivial. Very easy, you blow out of these power and die size envelopes, and it's not going to be good enough to compete with existing solutions.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a small company down here in San Diego called Qualcomm that more or less created our School of Engineering. So we do have some of the students focused on chip design. That's for sure. We're a bit unique in that space. So, so moving on to the next question here. As you guys started the company, again, right now we're focusing kind of on how this company got started. How did you guys decide who's doing what? Who's going to run, really the software? Who's running the hardware? Who's running the business side of it? Who's running the marketing, et cetera? How did that all come together, where you decided, okay, who's doing what in terms of starting up this company? Whose role is what, et cetera?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's the beauty of when you find good collaborators, those roles, they kind of form themselves fairly organically, right? When you have two Stanford professors that understand this really, really well, let's put it this way, I'm not the one they look to for technical guidance, right? So it's you got some of the most brilliant minds there, and even beyond that, we have a number of chip and silicon executives that chip and software executives that have been around for a long time, that they understand kind of how to execute and build these complex programs. And so I think a lot of it naturally falls in place. And again, if you're in the startup mode, right, it's the jobs are very fluid anyway. And one of the things that I joke with the team, and Fiona remembers this, very early on, we were growing so fast, and we had to add more desks. And so one day I come in, and all my engineers are on the ground, they're assembling these desks, and I stop and says, yeah, I told you we're building a hardware company, right? And everybody's got power tools on, and so I think that's the fun part of a startup too, that a lot of the jobs, they are not quite defined, right? It's not like there's an IT department or a facility. We just do it all, and so and that falls into the place. And so if you find the right partners, it's fairly obvious who the person that's best suited to take on some task, and then it naturally just becomes that, right? And every so often there are jobs where you have multiple people, and I think that we once you have a structure, you just try to figure out how to divide up jobs, and that's true certainly when you kind of start building out the executive staff for a company and some of the other engineering functions. You start finding folks, but early on as founders, I mean, for us, it's pretty clear. I mean, I've got two of the more industry's most well-known people in hardware architecture and in compilers and in machine learning stuff. And so it's pretty obvious that kind of, well, I'll defer to them for some of these things, and who's who, and other places. Again, I think what I've seen in my previous startups, it's pretty organic, right? You find great players. Great people to work together, and the roles kind of form themselves.
Makes a lot of sense. So Now we'll transition to kind of the funding conversation. How did you go about getting funding for your first company, for Samba Nova, and what was kind of that process like? What sorts of resources did you go after, and how did that go?
Well, always starts with the idea, and the idea is not just a technical idea, right? And this is probably one of the things for us engineers to always think about. You know, we sometimes figure out, you know, a piece of code or a way of doing something that is so unique, we're so excited by, which then completely goes over every investor's head, right? And so it starts with the idea, right? And having a way to describe not just the technical idea and the true efficacy of that idea. You know, like for example, this, I can do this now that I couldn't do before, and you know, people are most excited about those types of things, right? The ones where I can do it cheaper or faster, those are great too. But the really big ideas are the ones where it says, hey, I couldn't do, the world could not do this before, and now suddenly I unlocked it, right? Those are kind of the really exciting ideas. And so having a technology that you can credibly convey that it unlocks something, that's really, really good. But the second step is coming in and finding a way to tie that in to how the world actually would use it, right? You know, I'll use this example, like, you know, for a long time, people have, you know, silicon photonics is something that, you know, we've been researching and looking at for a long time. And you know, you look at these, the engineering that goes behind it, you know, you can actually, the bit rates that you can flash through, the error rates that people haven't been able to figure out how to correct, and the sizes of these things, that it's just been tremendous engineering, right? But tying that into something that you can say, now, this is how the common person can take advantage of this, and this is what it does for the world. I think that's a step that also is part of that conversation of the idea, right? Of the idea. It's not just the core technology, but the application of that technology. And so it always starts with that. Once we actually had a path and say, hey, this is what we can do, then then it is about figuring out what your network is, right? Again, you know, for me, this is an area that having been in the industry for 25 years, you build a lot of connections with a lot of the best people. And here's an advice I have for people always: is not just about who's willing to give you money or who's willing to give you money at what valuation. Those aren't the things. Find the best partner for your project, right? Find a partner that understands what you're trying to do, right? And understands kind of, you know, the value of it. And it's going to be all the, it's in any given project, Investor A could be the right investor for you, but it could also be the wrong investor for that project, but then be right for a different project that you think down the line, you know? And so it's just about kind of what each of these investors are focused on, because the investors themselves frequently are part of a partnership. And the partnership has a thesis, right? And the partnership has a thesis. I want to be in AI. I want to be in, you know, whatever, a blockchain. I want to be in whatever, right? These are healthcare, right? And so finding the right investor for whom the entire partnership values the space, and then within the partnership, the right person that will be your champion within that, it's a very important part. Because if you do that, then that investor and that firm will come back and support you over and over and over again. And as these investors come in over multiple rounds, we've done multiple rounds at Samba Nova already, but as you do multiple rounds, you want it to be just additive, right? That the existing investors continue to support you each round, but new investors come in and they add momentum to your company. And that's how you actually do that. And so, but yeah, I think, you know, being, building your idea to the point where you feel like you have plenty of investors that are looking at the space as an area that they want to invest in, and then finding the right ones. That's where you start.
That makes sense. And I'm hearing that tie a little bit into the earlier question about, you know, choosing your co-founders a little bit, is maintain that network no matter what's going on, right? Just because one investor may not be the right one for right now doesn't mean that they won't be as you pivot or add to your stack or add to your technology, you know, roadmap, that there might be another investor interested in that. So it sounds like a common thread between those two things are, you know, maintain that network, don't burn the bridges.
Not even that, I mean, it takes energy. I think,
Right.
A lot of students that we hire, and when you come out of school, people think, hey, networking is kind of like a side job, right? It's kind of like opportunistic. If I go to a party, go to an event and meet somebody, hey, great, just got their card or whatever, right? And it's actually an important part of the job that you should proactively cultivate. For example, my chairman at Samanova is Lip-Bu Tan. Lip-Bu is, some of you may know, he's one of the most prolific investors. He's been investing in semiconductor for 3 to 4 decades, and even through the downturn of chips, he continued to invest. And he's currently the CEO of Cadence, right? And I don't know how he does the job. He does multiple jobs, but I knew Lip-Bu 15, probably, gosh, maybe 16 years ago now. I mean, a long time, way before Samanova was even a thought, right? I mean, we had relationships that we built over many different projects, many different ideas. And sometimes it's just, you're just cultivating those relationships because you find great people, you find amazing people, you want to learn from them, you want to actually, be helpful. And those things are really important in a career, right? And I'll encourage everybody to make the time, right? It's always hard. We're working and we've got a lot of other things, but networking is really important. And it's not always exactly clear how it feeds into your short-term project. But like I said, sometimes great people, you just find them and you just hang on to them because great things happen at some point, right? Just because today is not the right timing doesn't mean that in the course of your career, there isn't a lot of timing where collaboration will come and you're able to actually get together with some great people and do some amazing things.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. So next question here, as you started to build out and grow the company, what were a couple of your biggest selling points in terms of both acquiring customers, but also acquiring people to work for you? What were some of the selling points, the key, really just selling points of the company that got your early customers and brought on your early talent?
Well, I used to joke with people all the time, that here's a typical startup's pitch when you're trying to hire somebody, right? You're gonna work twice as hard, right? There's a lot more risk, but you get to change the world, right? And really, this is kind of, this is really the ultimately where you find the right set of people, right? Where and I have worked at HP, I worked at Sun, I worked at Oracle. I mean, big companies have their role in our economy, right? Their role is to keep the business light, keep the lights on, run our world economy the way they have to run, and evolve it and grow at a certain pace to make sure that we keep getting better, right? A startup's job is to come in and bring in brand new ideas, maybe that nobody has thought of, that projects that big companies, it wouldn't make sense for them to actually take on. But if it does take on, it changes the world. And you've seen plenty of these, right? Lots of companies that come in and completely change the way that that we live our daily lives. And so I do think that that's one thing that's squarely in the purview of startups. And successful startups are not just allowed to do those things, they're required to do those types of things, right? That we're pushing the envelope. Anything that's evolutionary is probably not interesting for a startup. You can do those in big companies. But what we're thinking about are big ideas that could have a long-lasting impact. And so I think that's the pitch. We try to find people for whom they want to have an impact, a footprint, and something that lasts for a long time. One of the things that I was really proud with our last startup with Kunle Afara was the architecture. So Kunle, that was another idea that was spun out of Stanford, out of a project called Hydra, and we built a chip called Niagara, which is the first highly threaded chip. We had 32 threads in a single chip back in 1999. The project got started in 1999, and it was started by Kunle, Les Kohn, and Fermi Wang, and Fermi and Les have now gone off and started another company called Ambarella, and so they run that company. But one of the really exciting things about it is, for a while there, we were in the we were in the computer architecture textbook in chapter 4 for Hennessy and Patterson, right? I mean, it's that level of shift that you can actually contribute to. Obviously, there are a lot of big ideas there, but this is what excites people sometimes, that you're coming in and doing things that's so different that if you do it right, that you can get to make a real change, and people are learning from it and building off of it, and so, and obviously startups, you'll have a lot of risk that comes with that for sure, and all of that, but the opportunity to actually do something really dramatic and change the way that status quo exists today is just really exciting for a lot of people, right? And so we do that certainly with hiring and recruiting. I think for customers, to us, is all about finding the right pain points, right? Now, if you look in the world of AI today, it's way beyond pain point. Right? It's like you look at kind of, somewhere along the way, you look at these machines that people are building with what is it, like thousands of chips grouped together to make one computer, right?
Right.
I look at that and say, don't we think we could do better? It's like, there's a workload here. There's a workload here that requires something better, right? And I think that's kind of for everybody to think about, what is the problem you're trying to solve? If you if you find the right solution for a problem they're feeling tremendous pain on, there's not a lot of selling you got to do, right? They come to you, right? They just come to you because they're feeling the pain, right? And so. And that's the best way to, I've done, many different companies now. And when you have a product that people are kind of modest and you're lukewarm about, it's really hard to sell. It doesn't matter how good your salesperson is, they're not feeling the pain point, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when they're feeling it, you don't have to do a lot of selling, right? They'll come to you and they just want to see, can you really solve my pain, right? And so that's kind of how we've gone about it, provide solutions that hit at the core of some of the hardest problems that they're struggling with. And if we can do that and do that well, then turns out the customer base on its own is actually a great sales team, because they all talk to each other. They all talk to each other, right? We sold recently to Lawrence Livermore National Lab and Argonne National Lab, and the U.S. Department of Energy, some of the most advanced users. And they build some of the biggest models the world's ever seen, some of the biggest computers. And when they come in and say, hey, SambaNova is actually solving my problems, and not just solving these problems I couldn't solve before, but solving them in an order of magnitude speed up, a lot of people listen, right? Because they know, hey, these guys know what they're doing, right? These guys know what they're doing, and they're solving and doing some of the hardest problems out there. And so we kind of try to, we focus on the customer side, we focus on making sure our technology is deployed for problems that people really have today and problems that they're going to see coming. And then once we deploy it, just really devote your time and energy to making them successful. You make them successful, they're going to be a better sales and marketing engine for a company like ours than anybody else, right? And it's already proving to be true. So that's my advice to people. Just do right by your customers, build the right product to solve their needs. Everything else falls in place.
Yeah, I love that piece of advice of just not focusing on, getting the right marketing team, getting the right salesman, and just really focusing on the product and making the product and your customers kind of sell themselves. So that's fantastic. Yeah, the DOE and Lawrence Livermore, Los Alamos, Sandia, all those folks, the DOE, that's a tight network. So once you kind of, and they're all working together, right? They're all kind of on for one core mission. They're not competing with each other. So if one jumps on, it's pretty easy to get the rest to jump on too. So that makes
and the
wonderful.
Beauty of it is, and the beauty of it is most of these organizations actually cross the public and private sectors now as well. Right. So you go into a DOE and you go into Lawrence Livermore, they've got partnerships with a lot of industries in healthcare and various different things, right? So when you do it there, it's not just the DOE or within the US government, DOE, DOD, they all kind of talk as well, but it actually spills very quickly into the commercial sector as well, because they all have three-way projects going on. So I think it just proves the point. Yeah, and it may be obvious to most people and people who have done it for a long time. You maybe hear it, it's motherhood and apple pie, but I just reiterate it. Just focus on your product, make sure your customers are successful, right? do that, and you don't have to do a lot of selling, right? They'll do it on their behalf.
Absolutely. Well, we're as we want to leave plenty of times for question and answer from the students. So I'm going to ask the last one of you here. What would be, and you've already given plenty of advice, but anything else that you would say are some huge pieces of advice to our students, both interested in, students that are A, interested in starting their own company, but then B, students that are, thinking about, a future at Samba Nova? What would be some of your, advice for both of those populations of students?
Like I said before, right? Whether it's your collaborators, who you partner with, whether it's find the right investors, whether it's finding the right advisors or right mentors, right? Go around, find people you trust, find people that are going to be helpful, right? Wrap yourself around with folks that, and I've been in this for 25 plus years. I still look around and find so many people who are great mentors to me, right? And I keep surrounding myself with them. You can go to our webpage and you look at all of the advisors that I just keep adding there because they teach me a lot, right? They teach me a lot of things. And so, so that's my advice, find great people. All of us have blind spots, right? We may be really, really good at one thing, but we have blind spots. And so find people that can give you full 360 visibility into everything that you need to do for any company, right? Sometimes it's not just, oh, I don't have the technical background or financial background or the legal background, so I need those people. Even within the realm of technical work, right? I'm a hardware, okay, I need a lot of software background, vice versa. Or even within the realm of software, maybe I'm a compiler person, I need visibility into runtime. Just surround yourselves with lots of really great people. Find a way to collaborate with them, and do that for your entire career. Right, that's one company or multiple companies. Right, these relationships, will traverse the logos on your shirt. Right, these are the types of things that you keep for a long time, and they'll help you. They'll help you in career. But in any given adventure that you take on, it becomes a very good focal point to really activate that network and really have them help you.
Excellent. All right. So students, please feel free to start popping some questions in the Q&A box now that we're kind of wrapped up on the questions directly that we had for Rodrigo. I'll start with one that I see here. I'm going to reframe it a little bit. So outside of kind of some pure computer science or electrical engineering sort of students or folks with that background, what are some other roles? If you're assuming kind of at a base level, they have some software and hardware skills, what are some other key skill sets, knowledge, background, experience, etc., that you all look for at Samba Nova that make for really strong team players and employees at Samba Nova?
Well, what we look for the most is your adaptability and ability to learn. Right. One of the things that is in the DNA of startups is we're constantly learning. Right. We're doing things that none of us has done before, and it's about adaptability. You see a new problem, right? If you going back to the hammer, right? If you see a problem and then you see a screw there, what are you going to do? Are you going to hammer that in, or are you going to figure out how to screw that thing in, right? And so I think that's we look for adaptability above anything else. Can you figure out how to solve this thing that none of us has ever seen before, right? And so what I see a lot of folks come in sometimes is they're some of the best people in solving well-known problems, and they do it very accurately and do it very fast, right? But a derivative problem from that suddenly is a very different problem. And so we certainly are very keen on finding folks that are unafraid of taking these unknowns and then charting a course for us, because that's what we do. That's what startups we have to go explore with some level of discipline. The other extreme, one extreme is I don't know how to do it, so I give up. The other extreme is I'm just gonna shotgun and try every possible way and just see what sticks, right? And so that's for a startup, you don't have the resources or the time to do that. And so having people who have a very keen sense of how do we actually take an unknown thing and prosecute it with thesis in mind a set of signals that you're looking for to guide you that says, I'm in the right direction. It's a disciplined way that I think a lot of folks in academia are pretty good at it, but having a disciplined way to process these unknowns and then chart a course for the company, right, on some of these different technical vectors. This is very, very important to us. And so, and certainly, ability to work in teams, ability to talk across disciplines, that's always a very difficult thing. I mean, I find that especially in hardware, one of the things that I always find is that the hardware guys want to talk in nanoseconds, right? And then the machine learning people want to talk in epochs, right? And so, okay, how do we interface those? So the people who can translate the languages between all the different folks, extremely valuable to us.
Yeah. People that kind of see across the business, have that systems level language, kind of those T-shaped engineers, deep technically, but can kind of speak a language on both sides. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, enough understand. You're usually a deep expert in one area, but not to the point you siloed yourself to what's around you, right? Because interfacing your depth in technology to all the other functions is extremely important. And well, in any company, but especially at a startup, because we don't have a lot of duplicates. You're probably the only expert we have in that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so we rely on every individual being able to articulate and communicate tightly with the other disciplines so that the solutions are interconnected.
Another question that we have up here. So what were some of the main lessons that you learned when you were in graduate school that you brought in as you transitioned from academia into industry? If you can think back to that time,
no. First thing is you start learning all over again, right? I mean, I think about my background and my major was my graduate major was in computer architecture. I had not run a SPICE. I had not run a SPICE stack in I don't know how long, probably since my EE 101 type of classes. But and that was my job. And so be flexible. I mean, I'd say learn as quickly as possible. I I'll tell people, most people want to be influential technical people in their industry, whether that's in hardware and software, but in the construct of kind of what a leader really needs, even if you're a technical leader and certainly a manager, you need a bunch of things, right? And so usually people say, oh, okay, well, if I'm going to be let's just say I'm going to be a chip designer, my first job is going to be as testing and verification, and then they start charting a linear course. Okay, testing, verification to writing RTL. Then I want to own the block. Then I want to do architecture, and eventually I get there. It's a very linear thing. Well, it turns out what you actually need to know is a 360-degree wheel of all the things that you have to check off. You need to learn how to do DFT. You need to do how clock. You need to understand ESRA. All of these, and they can be asynchronously done, right? And so I always tell you, it's like, these are concentric circles of scope that you have to increase. If you draw a single line, then you got to wait for the business opportunity to come back around before you can make that next leap, right? If you just say, hey, what's the next business opportunity? Oh, you need a DFT person? Oh, let me take that on. I haven't done that. Let me learn that. In fact, that happened to me exactly. My first management job, I was managing an RTL team, and I was technically leading an RTL team. And my first management job was to go and do tester characterization. I'd never done a tester before. Yet in my mind, it was one of those things I had to go learn, right? I have to understand how testing works. I have to understand how system. So to me, I was just checking out these things asynchronously. And so as part of that lesson, allowed me to really build up on the core competencies that eventually allow you to run a business, allow you to have enough insight and say, okay, that's kind of how this ties into that, right? Otherwise, you have this linear progression that doesn't always match up with what the business needs you to do, right? The business demand isn't for, I don't need another architect right now. I need a DFT head, right? So my advice to people is like, look at what the business offers and look at the wheel that you have and all the check things that you have to learn and take the one that the business needs you to do, because they'll invest in you then, right? because then the business need and your needs are aligned, and they'll invest in you, grow fast, right? And so that's be flexible and take on the job, because eventually as a leader, you need to know all these things, right? You have to learn all these things, and so stay nimble.
Yeah, I mean, in other words, don't stay with your one single slice of the pie there, right? Try to get as much of the pie as possible with all the different skill sets you can learn them. For all of you students, I mean, you're learning so many different sorts of skill sets and theories and things like that. Don't take those for granted as you start to narrow in on, say, a PhD focus. Make sure you're still developing your skill sets in other areas. This is kind of a big kind of futuristic sort of question here. In your very high level, in your opinion, what does the future of AI chips for edge devices look like?
Well, I think it's probably not too different from the way that the web processes stuff today, right? As it is today, you already see it. Most edge devices have some amount of intelligence that's put in order to process. I've got an Alexa here, and you got a phone, and it does a set of things, and yet they all still have to communicate with some host somewhere. And so I think that model is going to continue to exist just in the world of AI. That there is a set of things that you're going to be able to do much better if it's local, right? For example, there's workaround is like being able to recognize, say, my voice from my son's voice, for example. I mean, it seems like that should be true. It's not trivial, right? I mean, you've got father, son, the voices have some similar cadences already and whatever, right? And so it's not true. So you're going to need something local that's able to kind of do some of those types of functions very locally, because you don't want that to have the latency of going back to even your closest data center edge. It's not going to be fast enough, right? And so you need to actually enable these clients to do that effectively, but doing it in a small footprint, because the power is really the issue. You already see with all the AI chips, right, to run these models that are really power hungry. And so that's a challenge for the Qualcomms of the world. A lot of these companies that are superstar companies in the space. How do you take these technologies and then do it in a way that you can effectively deploy them in these edge devices and give them that low latency capability that's absolutely necessary for you to do that? But that's going to be married to a hierarchy of infrastructure that does AI for other things. So some things you're just not going to want. You might be able to do it, but you're not going to want on an edge device because it takes too much power. So let me have the close edge data center infer that for me and send back the result. That's a cheaper, even though I could do it, it's a cheaper, power-wise, a cheaper way to do it than try to compute that locally. And so you're definitely going to have a certain set of things where you're just going to find what's the minimum set I can put that give me the differentiated behavior at the optimum power. And there's some tremendous companies working on that and have the technology to do that. And then there's going to be a set of people that focus on the edge of that to support these edge devices, all the way to companies that are doing de novo training deep in a data center and building 100 racks to build, train one model. I mean, you're going to have that. It's not different. It's not that different from the way that the internet works today, right? And, it's basically a similar type of model. And I think the AI is going to follow a similar model.
Makes a lot of sense. This is a less technical one here. What do you? I'm going to reframe this one a little bit. So, with respect to SambaNova and how it's been kind of managing this transition into the pandemic, how have you managed to maintain your company culture? Keep your team connected in this, now work from home world where people are just working all the time at home, constantly at home, but you want to keep them connected without having to go into the office. So can you have any advice or experience with how SambaNova's been doing that?
Yeah, no, we try. We try. I mean, it's and thanks to Fiona, we added a lot of people. So we've onboarded 150 people since COVID. So, right? I mean, that's so I've got 150 people in the company who have never stepped foot in my office, which is unfortunate because we have some beautiful offices we signed on just before COVID hit. Got remodeled, right? Ready to have people come in and share that beautiful space. And as soon as we get everybody vaccinated here, we can start gradually reopening. But no, it's been time, So we just got off this call. So one of the things we started doing, we'll do company-wide meetings every week. I do that and try to keep everybody up to date on things and. certainly for every new person that starts a company, I meet every single person, right? Every single person, we gets a chance to kind of have some time so that we can share some of the things that are important to the company, how we started the company. We have this thing where well, in our internet, with our internet, it's really a Happy website that allows people to actually capture their stories. That's one of the things I really like about this. And having the multiple startups, my experience has been that sometimes we get so focused on doing stuff and forget to actually capture the markers, right? Capture the important things. And so having stories like, people building their own desks, or, when we have, when the first parts came back, and when the team nearly mauled the FedEx guy who had no idea, what that was. I mean, these are great moments that I think really shape the culture of a company, right? That people come together and their excitements, and how we bring up chips and how we develop software, and when we release as we were loading the first box into the crate and shipping to a customer. I mean, those are exciting moments that we used to be able to do live, and now we try to do it through video and stream it, right? And so we have this place where it's stories, and everybody's contributing to it, whatever's happening, and sharing it, so that everybody gets to get at least a bit of a taste. It's not the same as being in person, no doubt. I mean, when this time last year, you walk into a SummitNova office, is buzzing. I mean, it's just buzzing, right? Everybody is just going, and mind you, we don't require people to be in the office. We always give people the choice of working from home, and it's always packed. It's always packed, right? And so because people enjoy each other, and the energy there's a gong there, because we were waiting to hear every time there's a new deal that happens, the gong hits. But if you hit it by accident, you owe everybody a drink, right? So you no hitting the gong unless there's a deal that happened, right? And so
money came in, yeah.
Yes, things like that I think kind of excite people to be there. And so so that we miss, right? We're looking forward to having that open. We try to do things that and Fiona and team have done a great job doing these happy hours virtually, and sending these cool gift boxes for people to enjoy together doing those things. And so one day you open up and there's some snacks and foods from someone over your doorway, right? Things like that allow us to kind of, at least as a company, come together. Everyone's working hard. We've got a mission we're going after, but I always tell people, remember, it's the journey. It's about the journey, right? When time back to the beginning, to me, relationships matter, and what you build here is going to carry for a long, long time in your career. And so take the moment to build those relationships, because it's well beyond SummitNova. It's going to last for many, many companies for folks. And so take the time, invest in it, and it's gonna pay back many, many fold.
Excellent. Well, I had one offline question that was asked of me, and so this will probably be the last question, unless we get another student to throw a question in there. 10 years from now, what would you like to see SambaNova? What's your vision for 10 years from now? What SambaNova is looking like?
I think AI computing is going to be the default on what's running in most data centers today, right? And and that's just a function of the workloads, right? It's just a function of the type of workloads that they're coming in. It's not us. It's most people find it that writing in the software 2.0 construct is much easier than before, and so and then the type of computational results that you get out of it is incredibly valuable. And so the early adopters are already showing that the footprint is going to be large. And I think for SummitNova, I think our aspirations here, and our expectations, I should say, even is that we're going to be a dominant player in that space. This type of thing is really hard to build, right? To build 7-nanometer microprocessors that run this type of workload efficiently, and tie it all the way to software stack that run true models that we can maintain. Those are really hard, and there are not a lot of people in this world that can do that, right? And so you're gonna open up the data center 10 years from now, and our expectation is you're going to see a lot of SummitNova in there. And we expect to be the one of the dominant players in the space, and providing the computational engine for a lot of the things that people do, right? A lot of the things that people are doing today. There will be other players. Obviously, NVIDIA is a big powerhouse in the space, and they're going to be in there as well. But our expectation is for a certain type of workload, right? Especially when you're solving these big problems, a lot of data, data sets are large, embeddings are huge. You're trying to take them to train these really complex models and get them to a certain level of accuracy. We're going to be uniquely positioned to tackle those because we can do it efficiently, and we're from grounds up meant for this type of problem, right? The first principle of our chip is for this type of problem versus, the CPUs, GPUs, where you're trying to kind of convert it to be useful for these other type of problems. Ours is just focus on this. And so I think that then, and given our team and experience and expertise in building product lines for a long time and having a lot of success in releasing into data centers for many years, I think my expectation is we're going to be a dominant player in there. And you're going to see, this logo I have behind me, that's the actual door of our servers, that are, a rack of our servers. So my expectation is to give it not even 5 years from now, give it a couple of years, you should see a lot of orange S's sitting in data centers. That's my expectation.
Yeah, I mean, those RDUs, those reconfigurable data units, do seem like they're kind of the next level of power for the sorts of models that people will be building for AI. So that's absolutely, that'd be great to see, and I'm hopeful for that for you. Well, I think that'll wrap it up here today. We'll certainly let you get back to your day-to-day business. Fiona, do you have any other questions, comments that you wanted to share with the students on here today?
No, that is all. Thank you, Rodrigo. I always enjoy getting to hear from him, whether that's within or without outside of the company. In the chat and also in the Q&A, I've shared my email address and also the job postings. And so, yeah, please take a look. And again, feel free to reach out with any questions. It doesn't just have to do with like applying right now, right? If you have additional questions, or even for Rodrigo, I'm happy to pass that along to him as well. But otherwise, thank you everyone for taking the time out of your schedule to chat with us and hear from Rodrigo.
All right. Thanks again, Rodrigo. We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having me. All right. Take care, everybody.
Thank